We're happy to welcome Frederick Van Johnson, Ron Dawson, Kim Furst, Marcos Rocha, and Ben Whitehair for their panel, The Gig Economy, Issues for Creatives. And special thank you to some of our sponsors you see up there. Be sure to check them out in the virtual expo. And Frederick, if you want to take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. You guys, first of all, thank you, FMC and Final Cut Pro Global Summit for having me on to moderate this panel. I think it's going to be a very valuable panel as we sort of talk through some sticky issues that are facing people that are working in the gig economy. And we'll start with that whole discussion, like defining what the gig economy is, and then we'll dive into some of the issues that people may not have considered as they make the choice to participate in the gig economy or not, should they? But before we do that, I want to do a roundtable and do some introductions and get an idea of whom we're talking to from left to right on my Zoom screen. We'll start with Marcos. Marcos, give us a quick introduction as to who you are and how you play in the gig economy.
Yeah, my name is Marcos Rocha. I'm a freelance cinematographer, director of photography. People use those two names interchangeably. Basically, I just get hired to subcontracted to film interviews, documentaries, stuff like that.
Okay, excellent. Awesome. Welcome to the panel. Got some big questions for you, so be prepared for that. Ben Whitehair, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Ben Whitehair. I am the COO of TSMA Consulting. We're a social media management and growth firm. I'm also an actor, so very familiar with the gig economy from there. And I'm to that end, I'm the executive vice president of SAG-AFTRA, the performers union. So spend most of my volunteer hours with the union and protecting people from challenging situations in what I would call the original gig economy. So that's I have a lot of other things that I've done and looking forward to diving in with all these brilliant minds here today.
Excellent. Welcome, Ben. Thank you. Yeah, good questions for you. And folks, if you have a question for the panel, we're going to get into a Q&A segment towards the end of this panel discussion. If you have a question, put it in that Q&A. How often do you have a chance to talk to the EVP of SAG-AFTRA? So go ahead and put your questions in there so you can get them answered. Next up, Kim Furst. I want to throw the mic to you. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Frederick, and hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. It's an honor to speak to you. I'm a filmmaker, producer, director, and longtime film editor of mostly long-form documentaries, but also increasingly narrative films. I have 2 or 3 narrative feature scripts that I am actually out shopping right now, and I've been using Final Cut since version 2, and I'm a big Apple user. So happy to be here talking to all of you.
Excellent. Welcome, Kim. Good to have you on the panel. And last but not least, Ron Dawson. Known Ron for, I don't know, a couple of weeks or so now. Yeah. Maybe a couple of decades, something like that.
1.5 to be exact.
There you go. Introduce yourself. Tell us why you're sitting on this panel.
Yeah, sure. I don't know why I'm sitting here. Where the hell am I doing? No, just kidding.
Me either. I was asking myself that same question.
My name is Ron Dawson. I originally, I started in the quote unquote gig economy back in 2002. Like a lot of people out there, I started in wedding video, did that for 5 years, and then kind of switched to corporate work as my focus, with the focus on the pro photography industry. And that's where I first met Van Johnson here. And I was doing a lot of work for high profile photographers and companies. And over the years, I ran a video production company for a number of years. And then towards the end of that, I started working for Frame.io. Some of you may be familiar with them. And I was there for almost 3 years. I was the managing editor of their blog. I grew their blog. And then I became their senior content marketing manager. And then last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, I started my own business. Timing was perfect.
Yeah.
But since then, the business is going really well, and I have freelancers around the world. So I kind of been on both sides of the gig economy, both as a gigger and a giggy. I don't know if those are official terms.
They are now.
Yeah, so I can speak that. Hashtag that.
Good.
Gigger, giggy.
Good. Hashtag that. Well, welcome. Good to have you. I'm familiar with your insight on this stuff, so I'm excited to share that with the rest of the world and have people start a discussion about it. So let's set the stage so to speak, of where we are, right? And Ben, you seem like you may have a very good perspective from your point of view on, which is the same thing as perspective actually, about what the gig economy is. Like, define it for us. What is the gig economy, and maybe why should creatives care?
The way that I think about it is that, historically, if you rewind many decades, most people, as people thought about it traditionally, you go work for one company, you work there for many, many decades, you get retirement, you work for one employer. And, the gig economy really is, in its simplest version, is just that you're working for multiple employers and going from gig to gig to actually do your work. And I think, what's most interesting to me is, what ramifications that has on both individuals and as a whole, when we have entire communities of people that don't have some of the stability that maybe came with what we had previously in a quote unquote non-gig economy, but also the freedom that comes with that. And, how is that affecting different communities, underserved communities? Some people didn't have access to, the economy in the same way and still don't. And so how do we navigate that so that everybody's being protected? And as creatives, most creatives, historically, it's sort of a gig economy and sort of always has been, right? If you're a creative, you're an actor, you're a creator, you're getting, because it's a one-time production, right? And some people are getting hired to work for whatever, say Sony or something, and, doing it forever. But, even in that case with the biggest companies, it's generally project to project. And how do we turn that into a career where we not just get to do what we love, but how do we actually get protected and build a life and, be able to support our families and all the rest?
Yeah. Have a business. I think that part of the connotation for the uninitiated, when you hear the word gig, it sounds like something temporary, low paying maybe, and you kind of get in and get out. You don't form any lasting bonds or relationships. It's a gig, go in there and hammer this nail in and go home, and that's it. Marcos, I want to throw it over to you next. Is that your experience with or a better way to phrase the question is, what is your experience with the gig economy as it stands right now? Are you thriving in it? Is it working for you, or do you sort of long for the days of a steady, exactly the same paycheck every 2 weeks, and benefits and free cell phone and all that stuff? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm good now that I've been in it for a couple of years. But when I first started, it was really hard, right? I had a day job, and so I was doing it on the side, right? And then I built up, then I quit my job, and I was doing okay. But then there were those days where you're like, where's the next job? I hope I can work again this month, and it's like that for like the first couple of years. This year for me has been actually pretty good. I just get referred, I get hired, and definitely replace the income I was making from my day jobs, any previous jobs I had prior to getting into filmmaking. So, I guess to answer your question, I'm at a good spot right now, and I think it just takes a lot of dedication, right? A lot of hours, way more than 40 hours per week. So it's a different mentality.
Yeah. And I was going to say, so Marcos and Kim, I'm going to throw this to you. So piggyback on what Marcos said about, hey, I'm doing great right now. It's awesome. It wasn't always that way, but yeah, I'm doing great right now. But next quarter, next year, some other thing hits the population that shakes the economy and all that stuff. What happens? So in your opinion, so the volatility of the gig economy versus the, maybe even if it's false, stability of a non-gig economy position, where do you fall on that? Is one better than the other? And what makes the determination on, hey, I think I need to go and I'm going to do everything myself and become a gig or freelance worker?
That's such a great question. I mean, the way I see it, I think similar to our other panelists that's spoken, I mean, I've always been a gig economy person, because being a filmmaker or being an editor, there have been two different times in my career when I either worked with it for a studio for 3 years, or I had, a long-term documentary that I cut and it was 8 months long or a year long. So then you'd have that stability, but then you'd be looking for your next job after that. I just think it's 100% up to us as people working in a gig economy now, as it always has been as a artist working as a freelancer and an independent filmmaker. You're just responsible for all these other departments that normally they'd have, like human resources, accounting, you've got your CRM, you've got to find your next gig, you're working on something, but you got to be growing and building whatever that next thing is. And these jobs as a filmmaker and editor, they're very all consuming. You might be working very long hours, but you've got to keep an eye for trying to kind of, wear all those different hats of being a promoting yourself, marketing yourself, using social media, being out there, but yet doing the job you're on right now. So I think the biggest thing has just been the balance and knowing that when it's dry, I feel like it's only my fault. I just got to work harder at trying to get myself out there.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of that as well. Ron, I want to have you chime in on that, because like you said, you straddle both sides of that fence, right? From the gigger to the giggy and all that. So help us understand, for someone struggling with that decision, and even to put a finer point on it, I want to be a creative, right? I'm going to be a film editor and cut films like the Avengers or whatever. That's my aspiration to get to that point. Sure. Right. So what should that person do? Is it go work for a company that's doing that and get a paycheck? Should they do it themselves and be a lone gun? Like, what do you think? Oh, you're muted, Ron.
Sorry about that. There's so many different ways you can approach that question. I think a lot of people approach it from the point of view of they have like this singular focus, like they already have it in their mind what it is that they want to do. They want to be a filmmaker, they want to be an editor or whatnot. And they're thinking about, okay, how can I get that? And I don't know, call this Zen or whatnot, but over the years, I've kind of taken it from more approaches like, what is it going to take for me to be happy in my life? And happiness comes from both creative fulfillment and being able to sustain yourself financially for the people who you love and whatnot. And so that could show up in a lot of different ways for somebody. If what really is going to make you happy is the ability to create art at the highest level and be completely fulfilled by it, regardless of whether or not who sees it. And from my experience and from the hundreds of filmmakers and artists I've interviewed over the years and the various podcasts that I've had, that a pure artist is really about creating art that they find fulfillment in. And so if that's something that you're aspiring to, you still have to live, right? So like whatever it takes to be able to do that. And so if you're able to, I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, and he talks about the hustle. If you're able to hustle and do a 9 to 5, whether that's Starbucks that gives you great benefits and pays pretty decent for the kind of job it is, and then you work in the evenings doing your art, it's doing that. And then maybe doing the kind of art that can get you paid on the side so that you can sustain yourself. And so in terms of the question of like, do you work for someone or do you do it as a gig? It's answering all the questions that what is going to get me to that level of happiness. And regardless of what other people say, and regardless of any other kind of stress or how people describe what you should or shouldn't be doing. It's like what's good and what's best for you, regardless of stereotypes. And that's how you make a decision like that. Like what's really gonna be best for you. And it could be working for someone or it could be working for yourself.
Yeah, and I want to get into that too. I want to get into the what's best for you piece, that whole roller coaster thing that Marcos kind of brought up. Sometimes it's wet, sometimes it's dry, right? In terms of the farmland. Ben, I want to shift the conversation a little bit in a second towards this IATSE contract or the averted strike, right? I want to just bring us up to speed on that. Before we do that, we're going to go to that next. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about just Ron brought up the idea of happy, and you have to do what keeps you, that you're going to feel fulfilled with. But with happiness comes money, or with money comes happiness, depending on how you look at it. Can you set the stage of what it means? Like if I decide, I know it's going to be across the board depending on career field, but are people that conscribe themselves to a life of creative work destined to be the starving artist, right? And be struggling paycheck to paycheck and hoping for that big contract from Sony or whoever so they can get, not eat ramen noodles this month? Are they going to be doing that until they're, 75? Or is there a career path that leads to buying Tony Stark's house on the hill, right? So set the stage for us there.
A couple things there. One, I'm not a fan of the starving artist sort of philosophy that gets put out there. I'm like, Meryl Streep, Tiffany Haddish, like these brilliant, like they are not starving. They are artists, they're creatives, and they're doing just fine. And so I think, as creatives, I certainly see it with actors, but I see it, with filmmakers and DPs and makeup artists, this idea that you have to like suffer for your art, creativity equals suffering. And to me, I just don't think that is always true, and certainly not a super helpful mindset to enter into, that if I'm not starving, that, and I'm not struggling, I must not be an artist. And if things are going well,
be a sellout. I'm
yeah,
selling
I'm a
out because I'm
sellout.
eating well.
Totally. I'm like, and I just don't, I don't ascribe to that. And I get where it comes from. And, it can be challenging, the difference in certainly, I see it for actors or, dancers, singers, anyone, but most creative professions, to me, what's different is that you're not always making money while you're building your career. Whereas like my girlfriend works in insurance, and as she worked her way up to being, a top position at a, huge insurance company, she was making money along the way. They were paying for her life as she was going along. Whereas, most actors, singers, any kind of creative, even, DP, filmmaker, whatever you're doing, those first many years, sometimes decades, you may be getting paid some money, but you're unlikely statistically to be making enough money to like sustain your everyday life in the same way, depending what you're doing in your situation. But
right,
it's not the same career path, but it doesn't mean you're not succeeding. You could book the lead in some film, or be the DP on a film that like goes to Sundance and the whole, world is talking about it and it's the most amazing thing. And you maybe didn't make enough money on that to like sustain your life, during that year, and that's okay. So part of it, I think, is redefining that. And I think it goes to your comment about happiness. To me, happiness is, sort of the core of that. And for each individual, you get to decide what's happy or not. Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, he's a famous like business thought leader. I saw him speak once when I was a long time ago, and he said, gig economy, being an entrepreneur, it may not, people think of it as like, oh, it's more risky. He was like, it actually may not be more risky. It is a lot more ambiguous. Mm-hmm. So you don't know where your next job is coming from. I don't know if, where the next thing is gonna, happen. And so there is a lot more ambiguity, and I thrive on that. I like that. It inspires me to move forward. And it doesn't mean I don't have my hard days, but like that's inspiring. And for some people, that's not. It's terrifying. And it's like, I don't know where that's coming. But just, I think even in this overall shift in the economy, more and more, I think creatives are actually in a good position because we think about these things and we're like hungry for that next job. And even in your traditional jobs, it's, you could get laid off. Those same things can happen. You can still, I watch my dad's a lawyer, right? He went to #2 law school in the country and did the thing and got, there was a time when the economy tanked and he was at the high end of law, but the economy shifted under his feet, and got laid off, so this like super safe job, all of a sudden he's now looking for work again. So I think that mindset of being hungry for whatever that is will serve you, whether you choose to say, hey, I'm going to do it gig to gig, or even I want to pursue my creative pursuits in a more stable environment, or maybe you split where you're making your money from doing your creative thing. And I think that was a big piece for me for a long time. I'm fortunate now that the things I get to do, I love what I do and I get paid for what I love, but that wasn't always the case. I was doing things I didn't necessarily love as much to pay the bills that allowed me to be creative and build that career. And that was really powerful.
Yeah. And I want to go around and chat about that too. The whole, it's interesting what you said, because I remember many, many moons ago, maybe 10 years, 8 years, something like that. Ron, you remember this when I was working at Adobe, and Adobe had those massive layoffs where they basically axed, I think it was around 500 people in one day. It was just, it was a bloodbath. And I remember, and I was in my dream job working on the Lightroom Photoshop team, right? So I remember going home, licking my wounds and getting on the computer and building a spreadsheet that I called Operation Fireproof, literally, right? Which meant on the spreadsheet, it meant diversified income, because I can't have this all my eggs in one basket thing happen again and some corporate decision rock my world and my ability to meet my other obligations. So I need to build, much like a submarine has multiple chambers in it, so if one gets flooded, the whole thing doesn't go down. That's kind of the methodology. Then just real quick, if you could just bring us up to speed on this IATSE contract and the strike and all that, what that means for everyone.
Yeah, so IATSE, you'll often hear it referred to as IATSE, is basically a union, if you will, of a lot of people who are working behind the camera. So, grips and people, working on sets and all of that. So there was the way unions tend to work is that if you're a member of the union itself, you basically are saying, hey, I give the union the power to go negotiate these contracts for us, right? So IATSE is empowered to go negotiate the contract that dictates wages and working conditions. What's it like to be on set? What are the restrictions? How much time do you have to have off? And what's the minimum you can get paid, right? Pretty much always you can theoretically negotiate for more. And so they were up for their next negotiation with the major studios. And, there's an Instagram account that a lot of people may be familiar with that was sharing these like horrific stories from set of like women being pregnant and terrified, like about to deliver and trying to hide it so that they didn't have to leave work, or people sleeping in their cars, or, these crazy stories. And so
stories with the whole Baldwin thing, right? There's those stories that were about, how the workers were, hey, I don't want to commute back and forth all this way for no money, and those sorts of stories, right? So this was going to address that issue.
Super challenging. So, so IATSE goes to the table with the producers to negotiate for better conditions. Like, hey, you have to give people a lunch break and you have to pay them, like all these things, right? And the producers basically said no. And so they said, okay. So they went to their members and they said, hey, the producers aren't budging. Will you authorize us to go on strike? And it was like, I forget what the actual number was, but over a vast majority, over 90%, agreed, like, yes, we give you the authority to go on strike if you need to. And then IATSE, they went back to the table. The producers gave in on a bunch of the things. And the union, the members negotiating that contract said, hey, we think this is a good contract. And they've sent it back to the members, because then the members have to vote. So that's what's happening right now. Members get to vote, yes, we accept this contract, or no, we don't. And if they vote yes, the contract will go into effect. And if they vote no, you theoretically go back to the negotiating table. Maybe there's another future strike. It's, pretty ambiguous, exactly what might happen from there, but that's where we are with IATSE right now.
Okay, good. That's a good summary. Thank you for putting that in a box for us, because I didn't know. I thought it was done and dusted. So it's still, the clay.
Members are voting. Yeah, members are voting right now. So if they pass to ratify it, the contract will go into effect, and if not, they'll go back to the negotiating table.
Excellent. Kim, I wanted to ask you, or switching gears a little bit with this, as someone that's watching this stream right now or watching this replay, and they're like, I want to get into this. I'm a creative. I love Final Cut Pro. I want to get in there. I want to make this thing make me some money. You're counseling, your young niece or someone that is trying to make this decision. What do you tell her? Like, what do you tell her? Do you go work for a company, go apprentice for somebody, just go to start doing projects on your own to get good, and then hang out a shingle and, start a Stripe account? What should these people do that are thinking about jumping into this space?
I would say yes, do all of the above. I mean, edit anything you can get your hands on. If you know, actors, edit their demo reels. If you have people creating content, find a way to just keep cutting, because it's that 10,000 hours in the saddle that's going to get you your skills. If you can get hired as a assistant editor, a logger, working with a big company, do that. And if you can get paid to do that, but just keep going no matter what it is. And you find your way. No two people's paths are the same because they never get the same exact opportunities. But if you have to bartend and, you know, edit on nights and weekends, then do that too. But find a way to cover your nut and keep going. Because also, I think, you know, you got to also do what you love. Some people, you know, some people really want to edit television. Well, if that's your vision for what you want to do, then find some way to get hooked up with a television job. Do whatever you can to get on, you know, one of those shows as, you know, a assistant or a second assistant or a logger or whatever it is that you could do. So I would just think, you know, your path will be unique. If you really feel you want to edit docs, or if you really feel you want to edit wedding videos, you know, just find your way into that path that that you're happiest in. It will change, but you just must edit and just keep going and edit under pressure.
We say the same thing in photography, that your shutter finger is filled with 10,000 horrible images, and you got to keep pressing it to get them out, right? Every press gets one of them out of there. You got to keep going. It's true. It's true.
So true.
Marcos, what about you? What do you say? You know, your niece or nephew comes to you and looking for advice on should they enter this industry? Should they?
I think they should if their heart is in it. Back to what Kim was saying, that they got to know they're going to sign up for a lot of other jobs they didn't think they were going to get into. Like, I just wanted to do my creative work, just film, right, and do that. But then you learn you got to network. Oh, that's another job. You know, you got to learn how to invoice, talk about money with clients, negotiate. You're a business owner, basically. You're a small business, and you know, that's a tough one. Maybe a lot of people don't have, or they don't want to do that. They just want to show up at a place and just, you know, here's what you got to do. This is your one role, as opposed to like the introduction of like, learn everything you can. And like the creative becomes a small part of where you actually are, right? I'm like, the majority of the time I'm spending here on the computer, like following up emails, invoicing, hey, how you doing? Network with people, making sure I stay top of mind. That's part of the thing they gotta be aware of. If they want to do this, they have to like really hustle and learn all these new skill sets.
And I want to, I think it takes, that's part of that calculus that people have to make, I think, when it comes to, do I want to do this by myself, right? Because it reminds me of a book that I read a while ago called Think and Grow Rich. And one of the stories, or one of the lessons in that book, I guess, was about how the danger of being seduced by the thing that you love can make you hate the thing that you love. So, you know, to use the example of photography. Oh, I love photography, but I'm working in this cubicle all day and I shoot on the weekends and I love it. That's the only time where I love doing what I'm doing, but now I got to go back and write these TPS reports. But then you make that jump and say, now I'm a professional photographer hanging the shingle out. To your point, Marcos, now it's marketing and accounting and taxes and social media and outreach and this and copywriting and WordPress and video and editing and all the stuff that you have to at least have some competency in, and the things you love doing, you're not doing it that much anymore.
And let me say one last thing too, that, you know, a lot of the work that I do now that I get paid for to do this full time, it's not that exciting, you know, and people think like, whoa, everything's super exciting. It's not, you know, but I am working there. And so anyone who wants to do this, they have to be okay with the jobs might not be what they have in mind, right? But they at least getting to do this job. For me, it's filming, doing you know, creative stuff. Some of it is just repetitive, right? But it pays well. So I get to do this, and it beats the heck out of having a day job, right? And I keep that in mind. And so you learn to love certain things because you know you get to do this. It might not be the most fulfilling, but you know, you got to work towards that. You know, that takes time and discipline.
Yeah, Ron, like I said, you're on both sides of the fence there, right? How do you, when you're, well, on either side of that fence, whether you're working for people or you're hiring people to work, how did you manage all that stuff we just mentioned, the social media, the taxes, the this, the that, you know, something new every day. Oh, now I got to have a TikTok account, or I'm not relevant anymore. You know, how did you manage all that while still keeping your skills up as a Final Cut Pro expert and trainer and writing books and all that? What's the secret?
Yeah, let me jump into that by quickly addressing your previous question, because because my son, who's now 16, has 2 video clients that he's making videos for. And he has those clients because 3 years ago, when we were traveling as a family, we were doing these projects called spontaneous cinema, where he and I would go out, and while we were out exploring, you know, if we're in Canada or France or Italy, whatever, we'd make up an idea on the spot, shoot it with my iPhone, and then he would go back and edit it. At the time he was editing an iMovie, now he's using Final Cut. And within a day or two, he would even make his own music. And within a day or two, he had a short film that we had just made up on the spot. And he was doing that over, you know, over the 2 or 3 years that we traveled. And he was also doing these travel diaries. Wherever he went, he would be like a docent talking about, like, he would go and he would read the little plaque that would tell you about the place you're visiting. And then he would have me film him talking about it like he was like an expert or something. Then he had he has a channel of, you know, has a playlist for his travel diaries, and he has a playlist for spontaneous cinemas. And he started doing stop motion Legos, and one of his Avengers Legos is really pretty badass. So, and he's just doing it. So now he's 16 and he has like 2 video clients. So just go out there and do it. And in answer to your question, Frederick, the way I balanced it was, you know, it's just finding the time and prioritizing. And, you know, it's really important that you prioritize what's important to your life. If you were to take the amount of television show you watch, I bet you, because anyone who complains about not having time to do anything, if they're watching Succession or Euphoria or any other TV show, and nothing against those, because I watch those, I find time, those are important to me, I watch them. But if you do watch those and you complain about not having time, I don't want you to complain about not having time, because every hour show you put into Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever, is time taken away from extra you can do. So it's all about what's important to you. And then I would add to that, you know, if you have a family, you got to prioritize your family too. Like, so work with your significant other, whoever they may be, as to how can I work in time after my work to also do my training if there's something I need to do, or to do the things I need to do. But it's really about prioritization and using the tools that help you stay organized, and determining what's important to you. And this is something that Gary Vaynerchuk talks about too. There are so many hours in your day that's wasted doing shit that you don't need to do, that you do because you want to do. And if you really get serious and disciplined about prioritizing what's important to you, you'll find the time to sleep, work, and do anything extra you need to advance in your art.
Yeah, I agree. And I would argue that those shows that you mentioned, Euphoria, Succession, whatever, that's research in this field, right? You're learning that new ways to cut, and how people state-of-the-art storytelling and new ideas, right?
Yeah, and if you're watching those from a training perspective, you know, absolutely. So, and don't, like I said, I watch those things, so don't get the impression that I'm saying it's a waste to do those. I'm just saying, I think there's a lot of things that we do that we want to do, and we haven't prioritized the other things that we also say is important to our life. And I think sometimes it just takes that hard self inventory of where you're spending your time.
Yeah, I'm going to spend some research time tomorrow on the Eternals. So I'll let you know. I'll let you go.
Frederick,
Ben, you have your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing to that. I think the other piece is being able to delegate. Like, the only way any business grows, like plus one, yes to everything everybody's saying. And like to what Ron was saying, those pieces that you don't love, is there a way that someone else can do all of it, some of it, right? Like, I have a CPA who does, I don't love going through my finances. I like to track them. I don't want to do my taxes. I pay somebody to do that. If you don't love social media, our company TSMA, like, we love it. That's what we do all day, every day. Like, that's sort of where the company came out of, is Ryan, who started the company, who'll be on the Art of the Breakout panel later, talking more about this, you know, saw sort of the need of like, oh my gosh, this social media thing is so important. Like, you can find ways to delegate, the different pieces of your business so that you can focus on the things that only you can do, right? Only you can be there with your family. Sadly, until somebody finds a way, only you can be the one, exercising, right? So just looking for, what are the other places where you can start to delegate some of your business? Like I think it was Marcos who said it first, but you are a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, and where can you start to find support in these other areas?
Yeah, let's do roundtable on just the mindset that it takes to operate at the level that all of you are operating at, or in other words, to be successful in the gig economy. So we talk about kind of like Ron was saying, okay, yeah, you gotta just sort of manage all this stuff. Ben, yeah, of course. You have to delegate what you don't like doing and do more of the stuff that you like doing, get better at it. But when you look at it through the lens of, okay, I love this stuff. I'm trying to make the decision. I love this stuff. I want to do it. I feel like this is what I was meant to do. But what if I suck at delegating, right? It's a not invented here syndrome. I have that affliction. I got to do it. Everything has to be done myself. It's never right. I have that problem, or this fictional person has that problem. Or, also you have the person that can't do social media or has some aversion to social media. I hate Facebook for whatever reasons, blah, blah, blah. All these people. Kim, you first. So the person that is strong over here and is deficit over here, is that an indication of, yeah, maybe you should go, fill out a job application, right? Or can they fill in those blanks like Ron and Ben were saying?
Well, you definitely have to have a certain amount of courage. I mean, it's very much easier to work in a job with a W-2, and you've got to have the courage to not have it be soul crushing when you have to work twice as hard sometimes to set up those opportunities. Even, now I work primarily as a producer director. So kind of like Ron, I'm on both sides. Sometimes I'm hiring people. Sometimes I'm getting in large budgets, and then I got to pay more than half of that out. And I got to be good at budgeting, not just making films, so that I can hold on to enough to cover my bottom line so it's still profitable, while still sending crews and myself to 3 or 4 different states around the US on some kind of shoot. So you got to be able to be a little bit of a Jill or a jack of all trades, in that you have to be able to, like many of the participants have said, you're an entrepreneur. So you got to know that you're going to be doing your bookkeeping, you're going to, or hiring somebody else who's going to be doing it. So you got to have a mind to spin a lot of plates. You got to be able to, if you're just someone who just likes to focus in on your work and you just want to do that and nothing else, you might be better just, working somewhere where that's really all you have to do, and other people do, cover everything else.
How long can the person last in this industry that doesn't have the lifelong learner gene? I'm using Final Cut version 2 and I'm happy with it. I'm just going to stick here because it works for me. All you fancy people upgrading, you don't know what you're doing. What do you say to those people that are kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
That's so well put. Like a plant that's not been watered, you are just going to die on the vine. You're not going to survive. You got to have lifelong learner. That is such a great phrase, and you have to be hungry for it and love it. See, I love learning new things, and I love leaning into challenges, and I actually don't think I'd be happy probably, and I wasn't, if you just work at a company, I want to always be doing something new. I want it's not even adrenaline. It's always something new. And I love that, so lifelong learner, definitely.
And Marcos, how do you keep your blade sharp over there, working on the front lines, doing this stuff, sought after creative professional? How do you stay up to speed on what's happening in the industry and shape your craft?
Yeah, obviously the same thing, always learning, right? You never are in a spot where I'm good, I can relax, I got it, so there's, this is also bad because I'm looking at people that are more talented than me. I have a network of people DPs that I look up to, and I try to talk to them and ask them questions and, hey, how come you do this? Or, so I'm very good at that. Just reaching out. I'm not, by any means have any pride in where I stand, right? I know there's
Mhm.
bigger levels and I want to get to those places. So I think just being humble about where you're at, don't, I guess, to me, it's always better to be a little bit self-deprecating about how good you are at something than be too self-praising, because if you're too self-praising, you stop working harder. I guess it kills a little bit of that energy.
Hubris. Yeah. Yeah. And the other side of that is if you're a gig worker, and I still don't know what the difference between gig worker and freelance is. So maybe we can, if there is a difference, but if you're a gig worker and you have obligations that you need to take care of, and like someone in the chat was talking about Avid, Philip Allen was talking about some Avid editors are still, hey, I'm just going to use Avid. I don't care about that other stuff. Right. But if you're doing that, it's paying the bills, everybody's happy. But then some new tool comes out that lets you do things easier. Let's say Descript or something like that. That pops up and you're like, hey, everyone's editing video now through text. The timeline is dead. Do you stick with the old stuff, Marcos, or do you move forward? And moving forward means that learning curve and the slowdown in your productivity to pick up the new skills on this new tool where you can just bang it out in 5 minutes in the tool that you've been using for a decade.
And I mean, I'm also guilty of that. Sometimes I like to use the tools I already know. I use Final Cut. I love it. I think it's fast, it's reliable, all the good things. There's other editing programs out there and people are like, oh, you got to try it. I'm like, I'm good here. I love this. I know I can bang this out fast. And but I gotta be honest, I'm not I edit here and there. I'm much more becoming more specialized every year where I just get hired to film, and I'm not like, I moved away from editing, and I did that purposely because I just wanted to specialize and become really good at that one thing, which is for me is the cinematography.
Yeah. Ben, I'm wondering, again, I gotta maximize my use since you're on you're
Do it.
You're
That's
a
why I'm
SAG
here.
representative. Who's getting paid these days? Where's the money at? Is the money in editing? Is the money in acting? Where is it in the being behind the camera, a grip? Where is the money right now? Who's getting the most money? And chop off the lob of the Tiffany Haddishes and all those people that are at the tip of the iceberg and have made it, but people that just want to make a respectable, let's call it 150K, 200K a year, right? Where are those dollars coming from?
I mean, the people with the most money tend to keep making more of it. And I do, to that point, I will say, I think one of the things that we're seeing in this larger conversation is that as, even just looking at capitalism in the United States, there is an increasing gap between the people at the like very, 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 very top and everybody else. And I think we see that across any of the, whether it's acting, DPs, whatever, you have people at the very, very top who are making, millions or billions of dollars, and then sort of everybody else. And so I mean, that's sort of that's another panel in what I think the challenges of unfettered capitalism are. But what I would say is part of it depends, like, if you're working behind the camera, for example, I think it is quote unquote easier to string together more jobs. Like acting is a little, for many people along the journey, like if you're an actor, a dancer, a performer in some way, it's a little more, okay, here's a gig here, or here's a really good gig, and then I don't have another gig for a year. Or, so one of the challenges we face with actors that's a big key, with the union is like exclusivity. You book a show and then you're not allowed to be a series regular on another show. And that used to be a small window and 22 episodes, but now you might book a series regular that's 8 episodes and they're not filming again for a year and a half. And so you're not allowed to work during that time. So like, those are the kinds of issues we're navigating. But, in terms of where the money is, I mean, at the end, ultimately, like I come back to people's, values, mindset, work ethic. When I really do look at the people I know who are working in front of the camera, behind a microphone, behind the camera, the people who are easy to work with, that people like working with, and that you're excellent at what you do, over time, I really do see those people making more money. It's not an exact 1-to-1 ratio, but it's pretty close. And over time, it gets closer and closer.
How does talent fit into that? And this is for the whole panel here. How does talent fit into this sort of gig world? And from my outsider perspective, because I guess maybe I am kind of gig, but I don't, I'm not taking clients or anything like that. But I am solo. So, but in the gig world where, like, say it's a movie, right? Someone staffs up a movie, it's got a good, healthy budget. And now there's this team of people working on the movie that we see in the credits, right? My outsider understanding or perception is that in Hollywood or wherever, these are schools of fish that kind of assemble to create this product, which is the movie or the end result. And then they may disband, but then those, you may see many of, I'm guessing here, I have no carnal knowledge, but I'm guessing you see many of those same faces on different gigs in that industry. So is that true? Kim, maybe you can take it first. Is that true that they're migratory patterns and you kind of start seeing the same faces? And if so, people that are watching this are like, I want to be in that school. I want to be in that school of fish to be getting these gigs, and traveling around. How do they break into that? Do they have to wait for someone to mess up and be let go before a spot opens up? Like, how does that work?
So that's a great question. There's markets all over the US. It's not just LA. For example, I was just filming in Michigan and there's I had to hire my whole crew out of Detroit. And it's funny because Detroit, maybe it's post-COVID, but everybody was working. I went through 20 production sound recordists before I found someone who just wasn't working. And these are union people who are like, I was a non-union shoot, but I was paying comparable union rates. And by the way, that's kind of come to my head. If you're a gigger and a giggee, the thing you also have to do is, I think if you're a fair business person, you're going to keep working, and you work with somebody and then there's just word of mouth. Like, you're either good and easy to work with and people like working with you or not. And I think if you are, then you're going to get more work, and that fish is going to keep swimming with different fish, because the fish are going to say, hey, that fish is cool. And I'm like, hey, I'm in Detroit. I called a couple people or posted on Facebook, who knows the hair and makeup artists in Detroit, and you get like 2 or 3 recommendations. You're going to call them over whoever you find on HubSpot or Production Hub or something like that, So I think it's about doing good work, being a professional, and doesn't matter what market you're in, because guess what? There is a lot of production. I mean, I was just in Florida last week, and again, hired half my crew out of Florida, super talented people. But guess what? That makeup artist and that sound person, they knew each other because it's a small market. So they have been working together, So I guess, I don't know, to answer your original question, I think be a pro, work hard, and just know it's going to take some time because you're building a business just like anything else, but it's your own business. Having talent helps. But if you have super amounts of talent and you're not a pro, you're not going to keep getting work. And it's just.
And are these people coming to you, as someone, and Ron, you're in here too. So are people coming to you and saying, hey, here's my reel or here's my stuff. If you ever have anything, keep me in mind. Do giggers have to do that, or giggies, I guess, have to make sure that they're at the top of the cream?
I get multiple requests or hit ups on LinkedIn every week, and it's for everything from and also sometimes straight to my email inbox. So sometimes it's for writers who want to write, or sometimes it's for video people who want video services. And you can't be shy about reaching out. Be cool about it. I mean, you could have a whole separate panel about good etiquette on LinkedIn on how, it's often not cool if you go to connect with someone and immediately you're like pitching your services or something.
I hate that.
Yeah, that's frustrating. But I think there is a way to be able to do it, but it's about knocking on the quote unquote doors where and nowadays those doors are reaching out. It's social media, it's sending cold emails, to the point, I think that Ben was making earlier about delegating. If sales is not good, if you're not good at sales, see if you can partner with somebody who is, even if they don't quote unquote become a partner in your business. Maybe you find somebody who's good at it and you pay them a commission for any jobs that they bring you. And you say, hey, you're really good at sales. I'm not. Do you think you can help me out? Can you spend a couple hours a week? And, if you're the kind of artist who can get, low 5 figures or even mid to low 4 figures on a job. You pay 10% one that could be a few $100 or more for a few hours of work that they're really good at, that they really love, that maybe they can do on the side when they're not thinking about it, that can help you get work. And it's worth it to you because that's not money you would have had anyway. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind as well. But yeah, you got to hustle. You got to get out there and find creative ways.
And we're going to move into the Q&A right now. So folks, if you have a question, go ahead and throw it in that Q&A. If you put it in the chat, please copy and paste it into the Q&A, and we'll blow through those in the last couple of minutes of this panel. But Ron, and I want to throw this back at you again. And what you mentioned, social media. You kind of rode through that, right? So I've spoken to several book publishers that the whole dynamic, not that the book industry is related here, but the whole dynamic of accepting a book pitch and issuing advance, one of the really heavily weighted variables in there is social footprint. Mm-hmm. Like, do you have an Instagram following? Can you promote this book when it goes out? So under that light, if book A is mediocre, but the person that wrote it has a gigantic social footprint, book B sucks. Book B is amazing, but the person has no footprint on social. Which one gets funded? Like, how do you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of that depends on the publisher and what their goals are. You'll find some publishers who are all about the Benjamins, and they are going to publish the one that's going to get the most money. And there are some smaller, labels, publishers who are really imprints who are really looking for quality stuff, and they have the social media people who can help get the book out there. And so if you find a really good publisher or a really good music label or studio or production company that's really into what you have to do, I don't necessarily think you have to have a large social imprint. If you can find a partner that really likes your work, again, it's about finding a partner that you collaborate with. That being said, I think it's nowadays I think it's important to have footprints across the whole diaspora of the internet. Social media, absolutely own your own website, own your own email. I mean, the outage by Facebook a few months ago, I think really speaks to that. Anyone who's using a Facebook page as their main website is I don't know. I can't use the language of what they are. It's just really ridiculous if that's your way of doing business. You need to own your own website. You need to be building up an email list, but you also need to be on the social. You may need to create a TikTok. You may think TikTok is just about, silly 16-year-olds and, Gen Zers doing silly dances, but, numbers do not lie. And there are effective ways. One of the biggest TikTok followers is this guy called Your Korean Dad, Your Nice Korean Dad. He has like 2 million or plus. All he does, he's like this nice Korean man. All he does is he says, today I'm going to buy a pizza. Look at this pizza. And he does like these really cute things as a Korean dad. He has 2 fucking million followers on TikTok. And so, but he's being himself, right? And so there are people out there who will follow you for who you are. And, it doesn't mean doing silly dances. You got to be smart about how you use each social media medium. And I'm sure Ben will attest to this. There's a different audience on each platform. The same thing you do on Instagram isn't necessarily going to work on Pinterest, isn't necessarily going to work on Facebook and Twitter, etc. And so understanding what the social media platforms are, being there, and if you don't have the time to do it all, then do what you can and just kind of expand, but build it in, be smart about it. And if you can, find partners who can help you.
Love it. Love it. Ben.
Yeah, I was just going to say that to your book point, TSMA, social media company, we have clients who are authors, and it's exactly that right now. And an audience equals money for the end person, right? So if you can bring an audience, you're helping them sell that, right? So I think, the same way that celebrities used to get hired, it's because they were bringing an audience, right? I mean, that still happens. And now we have ways to very clearly sort of identify what that audience is. But I think, that's beneficial to any company, any product, any service. If you say, hey, I'm bringing this, community with me, that's really positive. And, people are looking there to decide, Kim's staffing up a production shoot, and I bet she's looked up people's social media if she doesn't know them. Hey, is this person are they going to be fun to work with? Right.
Yeah.
Talent matters. I do think it comes first. Like, okay, my friend told me they're great. Do I think they're going to be good? And if she goes on their Instagram and like they seem like kind of a terrible person and they're like trolling people in the comments or they post some inappropriate things, she's like, I don't want them on my set. I don't care how good they are. That's not cool. So, you know, being mindful. And the good news about all this is we have control over it, right? We can change, we can put what's on our social media. We can put stuff out there. You can edit some amazing video and put it on your social media and people can find it in ways that, you know, before it was just that school of fish and whether they knew you or not. And I think there's so much more control we have now, which is amazing.
Yeah. Distances are shorter now, right? With this thing that we're using to have this conversation, right? So you can have real conversations before you pull the trigger and hire someone. Let's blow through these questions. Yasina has a question. She says, this is for anyone on the panel. Tips for balancing a full-time job with gig. How do you put your foot in the door in this gig economy / freelancing? That's 2 questions. Getting your foot in the door and balancing a full-time job with your gig once you get it, right? Is that a thing? Kim, you want to take it?
I mean, I think it's fair to say that you're going to be working some long hours and being very organized with your time and maybe even just burning a little midnight oil and maybe giving it away for free at the beginning. I certainly did. I know one of the best things I ever did was cut and shoot something for someone. They were an actor. It was a scene for class. I did it and I just said, hey, they didn't have money. I just said, you know, they actually got me my first big paying gig because their friend was somebody looking for a real editor. I don't know. I just think, I'm not saying work for free, but you can, until you're really there, sometimes you just want to do cut, shoot, edit, anything you can and just keep going. And you just got to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, there's that, I forget what the medical or psychological term for it is, but you guys may know this. There's that syndrome where people think they're better than they are, right?
Narcissism.
You think
Narcissistic.
No, it's not narcissism. It's something
like American Idol where people sing and they think they're great and
and they're horrible.
We'll call it American Idol syndrome. I like that.
AI syndrome. Yeah, well, it's that, and then people, even editors. They think they're amazing and they may be mediocre at best, but then they're out shopping their talent and, taking up some oxygen from people that should be getting those gigs. Is that a thing? And how do people, as we move on, we'll move into these questions too, but maybe Ben or, anyone, feel free to jump in. How do people self-assess so that they can get over that and not put themselves in a position where they actually suck, but they're going for a job that is well out of their wheelhouse? Kim?
Can I answer that real quick? Because I have to hop off. And so they can take it off. I was just going to say, find some people who you can trust, who can give you valid, real criticism about your work, particularly people who are already in the industry, and don't be thin-skinned about it. But thank you, everybody. I have to hop off. I have another presentation. If you finish this or you don't have time, it's 7 pillars of content marketing. But thank you, Frederick.
Yes.
Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome.
Marcos, Kim.
Thanks,
see you
Ron.
later.
Yeah, so
Party's heading over there.
I was just going to hop in and
You're
say,
Ron.
Ron has a session right now, so everyone should go and join that right after, and just remind people that the next sessions are starting in a couple minutes. So any last questions, if you guys want to answer any last questions, and then people can get their sessions.
Kim, why don't you go ahead and finish answering that one? We'll take one more and then we'll call it a day.
That was basically, he said exactly what I was going to say. So he covered it.
Okay, good. Here you go. It's already covered. Okay, one from AV Trainer. We'll go ahead and take this last one. AV Trainer says, how often do you feel the need for legal or business advice doing this type of work in a more freelance basis? Where do you go or recommend going for this kind of advice? Good question. Let's take
I often feel that. Thankfully, my dad is a lawyer, so it works out really well. So that doesn't necessarily help all of you. But I do think it's important that, I would just add to that, like knowing your worth and sticking up for it. And that sometimes means saying no if someone's trying to take advantage of you. Like, we have a lot of power, and that sometimes means pushing back. And if people are trying to take advantage of you, and it's hard because that's another cost. Like, there are legal costs to a business, including you as your own thing. Like, there may be times where you need to hire a lawyer to look over a contract, or fight on your behalf. It's why I'm a fan of unions, right? Because that's part of what you're getting is a team of lawyers who, you can call your union and they can go protect you. But I think it comes up all, constantly. And in the buckets that we've talked about, finances, budgeting, building relationships, I think understanding the, legal sides of these things is one of those areas to learn about that, you get to put in your business person's toolkit.
Absolutely. And Ben, why don't you continue as we wrap this up? If people want to connect with you or, the things that you're working on, maybe get your advice on how to join the union. And so what's the best way where's the best place for them to go?
Reach out anytime. Instagram is where I spend most of my time, at Ben Whitehair on Instagram. Our social media company, TSMA, is TSMA Consulting on Instagram. But yeah, hit me. If you Google Ben Whitehair, I have a weird last name, so I'm easy to find.
Awesome. And thanks for coming on the panel. We appreciate you.
Of course.
All right. Marcos, what about you? If people want to connect with you, where should they go?
Yeah, you can find me Instagram, YouTube. I have a YouTube channel on video production, Marcos Rocha TV, MarcosRocha TV. My personal website, marcosdp.com.
Excellent. Perfect. And last but not least, Kim Furst. People want to reach out and say, hey, where should they go?
Same here. Instagram is great. Kim Furst on Instagram. And then you can also try me on my website, which is www.kimfurst.com.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. If you guys want to connect with me, I'm at thisweekinphoto.com, and there's a contact form on that page if you want to reach out and say hello or something. We'll leave it right there. You guys got it. You're welcome. You guys rocked. This was a great panel. Now you got to go heckle Ron in his panel session over there, or his presentation. So everybody head over to Ron's presentation and have a great rest of your show.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for attending.